Thank you for listening to this podcast from TRE, Talk Radio Europe, your voice in Spain and around the world. For more information, please visit tre.radio.
The Friday Conversation, presented by Mary Harboe.
Welcome back, everybody. It is the Friday Conversation. Alan T isn't here. I'm Mary Harboe, and I'm delighted, and I don't just say that lightly, but I really am thrilled and very excited to meet our first guest. The first person, actually, I have to say, I've interviewed for about 16 years, so it's going with a bang. It's the first person who actually is, maybe a little bit scary. I do hope not. Claude Littner, welcome to our studios at TRE in Marbella. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to Marbella. What is your connection with Marbella? We just grabbed you off the beach and brought you in here.
The truth is that I've been coming to Marbella on and off since I was about 15 years old. Mm-hmm. So I've really enjoyed Marbella throughout the years. And it's a joy for me to actually have a place in Marbella so I can spend holidays here with my family and relax. So I really, really enjoy Marbella.
Yeah, it's a strange place because it is somewhere that we tend to come back to, isn't it? It's almost like sort of home from home.
Well, I find it refreshing simply because where we are, I find it very safe. It's very family orientated. No one's aggravating me. And so I have a nice calm period, which is not the way it is normally in London.
I just wondered about being recognised, because I actually knew when you landed because the owner of the radio station's daughter was on the same plane and said, oh no, he's landed very sort of safely. Your face is very recognisable now, isn't it? How do you cope with that?
Look, the thing is, I actually enjoy it. I like being recognised. I have no problem with people asking for selfies, which they do all the time. It's not that I'm sort of loving and looking out for people to look to see me, but I just feel that if I'm recognised, I can give people the courtesy of actually talking to them, having a photo, having a selfie, having a chat, and normally people react very, very well. In spite of my awful kind of profile, people are very friendly by and large, and they're amazed that I'm not the ogre that you see on TV.
Yeah, because it's the persona that you put across. I know that there's a lot of editing goes on and you're told to sort of appear in a certain way. But it's a little bit intimidating.
Well, the thing is that for The Apprentice, and I think actually more generally in business, I do take a tough and hard line. For The Apprentice particularly, I've got a job to do. And my job at the moment, as far as the interviews go, is to ascertain who is best suited to receive Alan Sugar's £250,000 investment. So from my point of view, I want to meet the individual. I want to look in their eyes and see what kind of character they are. But more importantly for me is to go through their business plan and to just challenge it. I'm not saying mercilessly, but challenge it to see whether their numbers hang together, and for the most part they don't, and whether they are in control of their business, and also for the most part they're not. But those things are fixable. If in fact the person has got a good business idea or a business plan that is investable, then I'm happy to recommend to Alan that should be somebody who is perhaps going to get his investment.
When, Lord Sugar, as he is now, approached you and asked you, would you do this? You weren't very keen at first, were you?
Well, it's really because I didn't know what was expected. Obviously, I'd seen The Apprentice in the US with Donald Trump, but I didn't know how it was going to work, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to accomplish the task. And the thing with Alan Sugar is that I never want to let him down. I always want to do my best, and I want to make sure that he's comfortable with what I'm doing. So the first series of The Apprentice, which actually was 19 years ago, it was really just going into a side room in Alan's head office, and there was one camera, and at one point all I had to do was just nod while the candidate was talking, and then they'd switch the camera around and I maybe ask a question. So it's gone from something that was not exactly amateurish, but something that was quite basic, to a massive production, and it's now highly professional, highly organised, and I think the viewers get the benefit of seeing something that's spectacular.
Yeah, very, very sophisticated and enjoyable viewing. One thing I'm dying to ask you, and I don't know if it's the question that everybody asks, but when the phone rings in the candidate's house at sort of 4:00 in the morning, and, Lord Sugar's car is going to be around to pick you up in 20 minutes, and they're all in bed, and then they all walk out into the street looking immaculate with their hair all done, and the girls with their eyelashes and what have you. Is that all set up? I mean,
no, it's not.
realistically.
The truth is it's not a setup, but there are tricks of the trade which I shouldn't really be sharing. First of all, it's easy for them to know that they're going to be on camera the following day. There's going to be a task. So the idea really is to prepare as much as you can. Now, in my case, I don't have to do my hair. But the truth is that when Karen and I were doing The Apprentice together, we both had to wake up, not together, I hasten to add, but we both had to get up at some ungodly hour and then actually be ready for 6:00 in the morning or whatever time it was to be on location. So there's not much that's trickery. It's what you see is what you get. And that pretty as well is what you get in the show. Now, I'm not saying there isn't editing. Obviously, there is editing. And the amount of times that candidates, you've got a camera placed in some particular location and the candidates have got to walk past the camera, okay? But they get so obsessed with everything they're doing, they walk away from the camera. So inevitably, you've got to call them back and take the shot again, this time walking past the camera. But eventually, they do get the idea. And so I think that the show has gone on from leaps and bounds, and it's really a terrific show. But what is the glue that hangs it together? And I'm not just saying this, it's Alan Sugar, because he's on top of everything, as he always is in business. He wants to know all the time what the candidates are doing. Karen and I used to have to, Karen as it is now, and Tim, used to have to report back to him all the time, to let him know what's going on, because he's remote, so he doesn't see what's going on, but he wants to know exactly what every candidate's doing, how they're activating, whether they've been successful, what they're doing, what they've done wrong, what they've done right. So it's quite intense. So, for example, Karen is fantastic on the show, I've got to say. So, for example, at 10:30 at night, Karen would have already typed in her report to Alan Sugar, and Alan would be on the phone to me saying, "Where's my report? Where's my report?" So he really wants to know all the time what is going on with a candidate, what's going on with the show, who's performing well, who's performing badly.
Having read your book, which I can highly recommend everybody, it's called Single-Minded, Claude Littner, My Life in Business. It comes across that you actually, because you were the eyes and ears as well as the interviewing side of things, you were, for a couple of seasons, I believe, the person who followed the candidates around doing the tasks. And you were full of admiration for, actually, it really is long days, hard work. Yep. And the fact that sometimes they sort of fall apart a little bit is hardly surprising. Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, I think I did it for more than 2 years, but I'm not quite sure how many years it is. And I would have carried on doing it were it not for the fact that I had a bicycle accident. So the thing is that the apprentices, they really do try their best. They all want to win, but more than that, they all want to do well in the tasks. There's no one who's shirking. Now, obviously, when you work in teams, you get some conflict. You get some people who disagree with some of the things that are going on. So that's inevitable. And also, having a camera in your face all the time, these are not actors. These are people who are young people. And it's quite intimidating to have Karen and Tim overlooking every action, reporting back to Alan all the time. And inevitably, there's a lot of stress. Long hours, you get tired, you make mistakes. It's part of the show, if you like, to capture those mistakes. But also, they do some things really well. It's surprising that in just a few days, it's full on. They managed to achieve so much. I'm always mystified by the fact, and I say this in all truth, one of the tasks is you've got to find a certain number of objects. So I look at this task and I think, do you know what? I don't know what these objects are. Maybe there's 10 objects. I maybe know vaguely what 5 of them are, but the others, I don't know. I don't ever repeat this to anyone else, because I'm supposed to know everything. But the thing is that it's a real challenge, and every task is a real challenge. Going to places that are unfamiliar, doing things that are unfamiliar, where it's buying, selling, being in front of, radio, television, interviewing, trying to sell things online. It's very, very tough. All the tasks are very, very tough. And it's no wonder that sometimes they end up in disaster, because when the pressure of the camera and the pressure of time is upon you and you've got conflict within the group, it's inevitable that mistakes are made. But that's what makes the show so great.
The show's brilliant. But how relevant do you think the actual tasks are to being successful in business?
Look, there's no magic formula for being successful in business, okay? The tasks are a good indicator of how you can cope with pressure. So, for example, when you've got a selling task, you can quickly see whether somebody's got the gift of the gab, knows how to sell, listens to the customer and responds accordingly. And similarly, you can tell where the person just hasn't got a clue. When you come to negotiating, the same thing happens. You can see somebody who's good at negotiating, maybe good at buying. So it does challenge all those different tasks, which are real tasks in business. Now, whether somebody's going to be a winner on The Apprentice and therefore be able to master their particular business is quite a different challenge. But I think that as far as you can mirror anything like real life, I think The Apprentice tasks are very genuine.
Pulling apart their business plans and checking the CVs, just sort of coming to that for a moment. And there's been so much news about the present government, for instance, and members of that not being 100% accurate or honest in their CVs. How important is it, do you think?
Well, look, let's not talk about the government for a second, but I think if you're going to try to get a normal job as part of your career, I think it's very, very important that your CV is the best that you can present, but also is not an act of fiction. So it's got to be factual. If you say you've got a degree and you've got a 2-1, you don't say you got a first, because it's easy to check up on that and to be found out. So by and large, it's important to be honest and straightforward. If you've done things, it's good to say what you've done. That's very important. And if you haven't done those things, it's just as well to avoid them. So put your best foot forward. And I think the interview process is one which mirrors real life to a certain extent, not ideally, because in The Apprentice, it's a one-way situation. I'm in control and the person really is there to answer my questions. In a traditional interview, it's a two-way process. The interviewer wants to see if you're a suitable candidate for that particular job, and the interviewee wants to make sure that there's a good mix of people so that they can make an impression on you and you can make an impression on them, to make sure that the fit is right and the job that you end up getting, if you do get a job, is one that you're best suited for and fits the culture of the company.
Yes, and you don't want to talk about the politicians who've perhaps been
the politicians,
a little bit on theirs.
I think the Conservatives, when they were in government, made a lot of mistakes, huge amount of mistakes, but I genuinely believe that the Labour government are making even bigger mistakes, and I think it's problematic for anybody, in as much as I think the UK is in serious financial mess, and I don't think the way to alleviate that mess is by imposing further penalties, further tax charges, further dismissing people or not allowing people to thrive. So I believe that all the government strategies are counterproductive. I wish them the best of luck, but I think everything that's going on at the moment is not going to generate profits for companies, employment for people, and good careers.
It's a very difficult time for a small business or an entrepreneur to set up and try and succeed and sort of just get beyond that level. It's hard to make money now, isn't it?
Well, I think if you're an entrepreneur, then you know that you're a risk taker. You know that you're enterprising. That's the name of the game. So you take some risks. Hopefully they pay off. You do your absolute utmost to make sure they pay off. But small businesses who are kind of stuck, if you've got a small grocery shop, for argument's sake, you are relying on customers coming through your door and buying things. But the thing is that if they don't come through the door, you are stuck. You can't suddenly do something else. You've got a shop, you've got a business, you've got to try and run it to the best of your ability. When prices are rising and incomes are not rising, you find that people are stretched. So it's no wonder that the small businesses are struggling at the moment. But having said that, for every small business, there's always someone who will find a way of capturing more business, of making a success of it. So it's a tough world. It's a very tough world. And unfortunately, a lot of people who, in my view, are taking the government for a ride in terms of claiming benefits that some of them clearly are accountable and deserve, but a lot of people are just taking the easy way out, claiming benefits and not looking for jobs, not taking the initiative. And that's what sets people apart. People who can actually are driven, who want to make a success of their lives, who want to progress their careers, as opposed to people who just give up.
I suppose it's a sort of age-old situation that people, perhaps really successful business people like yourself or like Lord Sugar, should be the politicians. They're running mega companies instead of running the country. And perhaps the problem is that most of the cabinet at the moment actually haven't ever done any business as such.
Well, I think politics is completely different from business. And I'm not saying that business people can't be influential, but politicians have got their own way of working. They know their own machinations, and I think they are very important. And I think that business people are important to a certain extent in terms of guiding some of the politicians to do certain things in a way which actually will enhance business, which will promote business. But I don't think that you want business people to be taking over the job of politicians. It's quite a different skill set, and I think that that they should be left to do their thing with the advice of people who are entrepreneurs, business people who have actually lived a life and done certain things, as opposed to people who just talk about them without actually having lived it.
Yeah, it's a huge difference, isn't it? Can we talk about last night's final before we leave the subject of The Apprentice behind? So just a little bit of a spoiler alert here. If you haven't watched it yet, you might like to sort of just press mute for a few moments, because we're going to be talking about Lord Sugar's latest business partner, the person who won. His name is... or on mute if you haven't watched it, Dean Franklin. It's all to do with air conditioning. And I think the way that it was edited, the way that we saw it sitting on our sofas last night, it looked a little bit touch and go. It was not as clear-cut as one might have thought, because Anissa had her fusion pizzas and everybody said they were just delicious. Here was a pizza which was sort of half Indian and a little bit of a pizza dough, or even a chickpea flour dough, which appeals very much to me, I must say. And she had all her plans. She certainly presented herself, I think, just amazingly. She really did appear as if she's was confident and that she was got the world sort of all organised in her head as well. But no, went for Dean and the air conditioning and what some of us might think of as a little old-fashioned sort of business. There was no technology involved. There was no sort of food. There were no dark kitchens. It was all about getting an apprentice. He wanted to get a new van. He wanted to get his workshop sorted out and his storeroom. They were all things you could touch and feel and you could really relate to. Do you think so?
Well, the thing is, obviously I saw the 5 finalists, and you get the usual mix of people who are, when I say wannabes, I think people who have got business plans that are uninvestable. And it's a shame that you get to the last 5 and you have a situation where some people are clearly uninvestable. But the 2 who were the finalists were super candidates for completely different reasons. So you've got Anissa, who is a fantastic candidate. Her business plan was good. Her business was good. As Mike referenced, he's actually tasted the product. And she was an accomplished woman. So I think that she's a super, super candidate to have got to the final. And to a certain extent, she should have been a winner, because she's got certain qualities which are absolutely admirable. And I think, as Lord Sugar mentioned, and this isn't a spoiler, but I think she'll go far in business. But I think the thing is, and I look at this from my point of view, I don't think that her business had legs. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but I just feel that it's a tough business. You've got established players, whether it's Pizza Hut or a whole load of other Domino's, et cetera, who are dominating this market, absolutely dominating. And the last thing they're going to want to do is to accept a newcomer. So I think that she's going to do well, perhaps in quite a limited way, but she has got ambitions, and who knows, I've been wrong in the past, I'm going to be wrong with her. She might make a huge success of it. As far as Dean goes, he wasn't great on The Apprentice, but he has got an existing business. And I think even though you may think this isn't a technological business, which might be Alan's forte, Alan actually has invested in lots of businesses where they haven't been technology-based. They've been all kinds of businesses. So he's not kind of wedded to technology, although he's obviously made his fortune to a certain extent in that. But I think that Dean presented a different opportunity for Alan. I think it's an opportunity of a young man who has a strong family feeling, and I think for Alan that probably resonates. He's a family man, and I think for Alan, for me certainly, you want to secure your children's future. You want to do the best you can for your children. And I think to a certain extent, and I can't speak for Alan, I'd have been swayed towards Dean, even though he wasn't the best candidate. Anissa was the best candidate, but I think that he had something endearing about him, something that perhaps indicated that he could be an entrepreneur, somebody who was prepared to graft, work hard, wasn't going to give Alan Sugar a lot of headaches, was going to be somebody who, if Alan Sugar mentored him and he was able to buy some more vans, have a showroom, promote his product in the right kind of way, probably could grow the business to make it a successful business. And I think Alan's not looking for problems. He wants candidates, I think, who will be successful without too much intervention. So I'm thinking that Anissa will be successful. I think Dean will be as well. So great credit to him for winning. And I'm just hoping that he puts his plan into action and he's carefully managed and coached so that he actually can have a successful business at the end.
Fantastic. The feeling on our sofa was that maybe he'd do, and by he I mean Lord Sugar, would invest in both.
It's not impossible. It's not impossible. I mean, I think that it's not that he has only got the money for one investment. That's not the problem. I think that the rules of the game of The Apprentice are there is one winner. Yeah. And I think for the last 19 years, there is one winner. And that's not to say that other people haven't got good business ideas that maybe Alan would be attracted to. But I think for the show, I think the important thing is there's one winner. That winner is going to get £250,000 of Alan Sugar's money, going to be a 50% shareholder in the business. That's the deal. Anything that happens later on, when the cameras aren't showing or when somebody comes up with an idea that is attractive to Alan, there may be opportunity for Alan to invest further, but that's not part of the show.
Fantastic. Well, if you haven't seen it yet, it's a great series. And of course, everybody's watches on catch up. And if you've spoiled the ending for you, I'm really sorry. But there you are. You were warned. You were warned. I'm speaking to Claude Littner in the studios here at TRE this Friday afternoon. We're going to take a short break and we'll be back in just a moment.
The Friday Conversation with Mary Harboe.
Yes, indeed. Mary Harboe sitting in for Alan T this Friday afternoon after a gap of, I don't even know how many years. I was trying to work it out and it's so scary. I think it's probably 16 years since I put that fader up and said, hello, good afternoon. But there we are. It's lovely to be back. And thank you so much for all the nice messages that are coming in. But it's not about me. It's about Claude Littner, who's here in the studio. And his book is called Single Minded. We're talking about The Apprentice. We're just putting that to one side for a moment because I found it fascinating reading your book. And I found particularly interesting the fact that you were not a good student. On the contrary, your school report and the teachers didn't like you, said you'd never amount to anything. And I mean, look at you now.
Well, I think that I went to the Lycée Français de Londres, and I was very, very happy to be there. And in fact, it's in spite of the fact that I wasn't a good student, it wasn't for the lack of trying. It wasn't because I was lazy. It's because I just couldn't cope with it. And the only subject I was any good at was maths. But I progressed along from the age of 4 to 17. And there's something at the school which is something called the Tableau d'honneur. And Tableau d'honneur is a quarterly report that you get, and it's a certificate you get for showing that you've been a good student or you've achieved certain things. And the headmistress was a horrible woman named Madame Seriex. Okay,
You'd never forget that name, will you?
No, never. And she took great pride in what you did was, if you got this tableau d'honneur, then the answer was oui, and you'd go on to the next. So, for example, Michael Lang comes before Littner. Michael Lang was very, very clever, very, very clever boy, always top of. And so Michael Lang, Madame Seriex would say, tableau d'honneur, oui. Okay? Now, Esther Madoness would be next before Claude Littner. And so this horrible woman would say, Claude Littner, and I think to myself, oui, I've got it. Non, she'd say. Tableau d'honneur, non. Oh. So I was mortified. And then she'd go on to add Esther Madoness, oui, and everybody else. So for whatever reason, I could never make my mark, good mark at the least. So having said that, I was no angel. I messed around a lot. But I just got to the stage where I couldn't really carry on at the lycée. It was intolerable for me. My reports were terrible. My father was very upset getting a report. And, for example, I was cheeky enough to have a report that say, for example, très paresseux, very lazy. And then the next sort of quarter, I got on my report, it's paresseux, lazy. And I say to my father, look, I'm making improvements. I was très paresseux, and now I'm just paresseux. That didn't really wash with him either. So Mr. Morgan was my English teacher and careers master, and his final words to me, which is terrible for somebody who was sensitive and failing at school, was said, Claude, you'll never amount to anything. That was such a hurtful thing. To this day, I still remember him saying it to me, and it left a mark on me. So I think for anybody who is at school and isn't doing well, don't be put off. Just do your very best. You're not good at that particular thing, you'll be good at something else. And the important thing is to find your niche in the world, to find the one thing or the several things that you happen to be good at and try and stick with it. Because I think that you can easily get put off when you're 16, 17 years old and think, well, I'm no good at school, I'm going to leave and I don't know, do what. But the thing is, it's important to take a trade, have a career, give yourself an opportunity of earning a living for yourself and for your family. So I think that that's a key thing for me. And I am the way I am, but I've just been always a hard worker, not always successful, but just determined to succeed, no matter what it took, no matter how many times I had to sit an exam and fail, I'd sit the exam again until I passed it. So I'm pleased to say that I've got my first degree in business studies. I've got a master's in business studies, and my parents wouldn't believe it, but I've got the Claude Littner Business School at the University of West London. It was unimaginable at an early age that I could have possibly achieved what I've achieved. But there you are. I'm an example to other people of trying your best and just doing what you can to be successful. Or if it's not success you're after, at least doing the best you can at whatever it is you want to do.
How do you actually define success?
Well, for me, success is doing well in business. That's what I'm all about.
But being happy as well in there?
Okay. The thing is that I'm very happy doing what I do. I just love what I like most is situations that are hopeless. That's what I thrive. When everybody's gone in and it cannot be saved, the company can't be saved, that's where I like to be called in, because I think to myself two things. The first thing is, this company is failing. I can't do anything bad about it because it's already dead. And the other thing is, do you know what? I'm going to make a success of this. I'm going to turn it around. And I've thrived in terms of finding companies or being offered opportunities for businesses that are really failing and trying to turn them around. I love doing that.
And you've done it so successfully throughout your business career. One thing that you did leave school with, or the lycée with, was, of course, being bilingual with French, which has been a huge advantage, I'm guessing, throughout life too.
Well, it's quite amazing how life takes a certain turn. So I thought that speaking French was a complete waste of time. I struggled, not with French. That was my first language. But the thing is, I didn't think it would ever lead me to anything. But as luck would have it, my first job was one where I went for a number of interviews, and I couldn't understand why I had to go to so many interviews. And in the end, I said to the interviewer, I said, look, can you just tell me, what is this job? What is the job? And they said, well, it's to run a shirt manufacturing company in France, the largest shirt manufacturer. I thought, I'm not going to France. I'm not going to France. So, in fact, I was kind of determined not to take the job. But in point of fact, and again, life played a funny trick on me. I happened to meet John Harvey-Jones. Nobody of my generation will remember John Harvey-Jones, but he was on television, and he was a turnaround specialist, and he famously went to Morgan Cars and said it would never succeed. And of course, they're still in business. But I had the opportunity of meeting him once, and I went up to John Harvey-Jones and I said, during a coffee break, and I said, can you just give me some advice, please? I've been offered this job in northern France. Before I could even say the words, he said, grab it, you'll never look back. So I did take the job in northern France, and I haven't looked back.
Can I just take you also, I think it might be of interest to our listeners, to Madrid, outside Madrid, Tres Cantos?
Tres Cantos.
Where you were with,
okay.
Was he just Alan Sugar then, I think? But,
yes.
But
okay, well, the thing is that...
yes, I just wanted to mention that there was something quite funny that happened that you mentioned in your book, and I think we can all relate to that when we first arrived in Spain.
Well, the thing is, I've got to go back, forgive me for doing so.
No, please do.
Eventually... I came back from France and I had no job. And I think the other thing is that when you've got no job, I think you've got to show true grit, because I must have written 100 applications and got turned down until a friend of mine, I went to him and I said, do you know anyone who's got any jobs? And he said, well, yeah, I can speak to my brother-in-law. I didn't know who his brother-in-law was. And in fact, that led to me meeting Alan Sugar. And after a sort of not a particularly great interview from my point of view, I secured the job of Chairman and Chief Executive of Amstrad International. And the reason I got the job is because I spoke French. So after years and years of thinking, French is a useless waste of time, I got the first job in northern France and then a job with Alan Sugar. So I did pretty well I must have done pretty well, because following on from the first job with Alan, he said, right, you've done a fantastic job, Claude. And he's not one for giving compliments. You've done a fantastic job. I now want you to go to Spain and do exactly what you did in France, do exactly that in Spain. Well, France is not a problem because I spoke French. Spanish was not my language. So the first day I thought I'd gather the troops, and I said to them, look, what we've got to do is we've got to work very, very hard. I'm not sure if I spoke in English or Spanish or a mixture of both. But it came to lunchtime. I went back into the office, and I could have had a luxurious office. I just chose to have an office on the side where I could keep an eye on everybody and be part of the team. And I looked up. It was about 1:00. And they'd gone. So I thought, oh my God. I phoned Alan and I said, I'm really, really sorry. I don't know how to put this to you, but I think they've all gone on strike. They've left. There wasn't a single person there. Oh, don't be so stupid. Don't be so stupid. They haven't gone, so they've gone to have siesta. They'll be back at 4:00. And I was, I said, oh, good. Nobody's told me that there's siesta time. And so sure enough, at 4 or 5 o'clock, they all turned up. I thought, whew, that's a bit of luck. So that was my first experience of Amstrad España, Tres Cantos.
Fascinating. We're going to take another break there, because I also would like to talk to you after the break, if I may, about some really very serious and unpleasant health issues that you've had to overcome over the years. And we'll be talking about that with Claude Littner after this short break.
The Friday Conversation with Mary Harboe on TRE.
That's what it is, surprisingly enough. It's the Friday Conversation. Welcome back, everybody. I'm talking to Claude Littner. We're delighted to have him here in the studios of TRE Towers. It's really nice that he can be here. Particularly also we're going to have a little look at some of the hurdles that you've had to overcome in life, because it's not all been sort of plain sailing by by any means. I think you were 47 when you were diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which was a complete surprise. You were not expecting it at all. Went for a quick checkup for what you thought was a hernia, and then it all started to unravel.
Well, the point is that I thought at that time I was doing really well. I was chief executive of Tottenham Hotspur, a club that I'd followed throughout my life and supported throughout my life. And so it was a tremendous honour to be offered that opportunity. It's fair to say that I probably didn't succeed as well as I hoped at Spurs, because whereas ordinary business or normal business, you can do certain things without being under the glare of the spotlight of newspapers and the press, at a football club, especially one as prominent as Spurs, anything you do, anything you say, and even if you don't say or do it, it ends up in the newspapers. So I didn't really appreciate that. And so one early example is when I walked into Spurs the first day, I saw about 36 crates of milk. So at the end of the day, I said, what's the milk doing? And the following day, there were a further 36 crates of milk. So I said to Audrey, I said, can you just explain what's this milk doing? Well, when the players come to train at White Hart Lane, then they need milk. But when they train at the training ground, we don't need milk. So I said, right, what we're going to do, cancel the milk. And if they're coming to White Hart Lane, go to Tesco and buy the milk. I thought it was a sensible idea. I still think it's a sensible idea.
100%.
Yeah.
What a waste.
But on Saturday, we lost the game. And on Sunday, the headline was something like, Littner Supremo cancels the milk, and the players were too weak, and that's why we lost the game, because they were too weak, because they didn't have their milk. I mean, it's just all this kind of nonsense. But, and I found that forever I was getting lots of letters from fans, and now I appreciate how clever fans are. They know football. They watch football week in, week out. They know when something's right. They know when something's wrong. But defending Spurs, they'd write me letters of complaint, and I'd palm them off with rubbish saying, no, you're not right, and Spurs are wonderful, and you've got the wrong end of the stick, which is completely wrong. I now understand the mistakes I made. Coming on to my health issue, on one particular occasion, Alan Sugar came into my office, which is unusual for Alan, because he was basically came on match days. He came into the office, somebody must have said something to him that wasn't correct, and he had a go at me. And I thought there's no point in arguing with him. And I'd had a sort of pain in my groin, which I'd self-diagnosed as having hernia, because lots of the footballers got hernia. So with that, I thought, I'm not going to argue. I picked up my case, walked out of the room, switched my phone off because I thought that would annoy Alan, and went to the doctor. And I told the doctor, look, I've got a hernia. He examined me. He said, that's not a hernia. I said, I think you'll find it's a hernia. He said, no, I don't think it is a hernia. And he asked me to go and see a specialist. I went to see the consultant, and the consultant put me on this trolley thing and looked at my chest and said, you've got a very good heart. I don't think he meant I was a nice person. I said, yes, I've never smoked. So he went down my abdomen and he took the camera away. He said, oh dear. And with that, I went to see another consultant, and who said, I've really got some bad news for you. I brought the Spurs doctor in to hear the bad news, because I thought I'm going to hear bad news and I probably won't be able to understand it. And so the Spurs doctor came along, went into this little room, and the oncologist said, you've got cancer, you've got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you've got cancer, you've got 6 months to live. And with that, the Spurs doctor fainted. So I'd heard all this terrible news, and I was there trying to liven up the doctor. Anyway, I got over that hurdle, and the point is that followed quite a few years of being in hospital, receiving chemotherapy, and for anybody who's gone through that cancer, it's quite horrific. It was horrific in my day, and I think it's horrific now. I got incredibly lucky because after years of having chemotherapy and lots of horrific stories, they said, we can't save your life. We've only got one. Have you got any siblings? I said, yes, I've got a sister. And she actually saved my life because I had a transplant, a cell stem transplant. And during that period, they completely irradiate you. And you've got about 7 days for the stem stems to work or not work. If they don't work, you're finished. You're finished. Fortunately, in my case, my sister saved my life. The stem cells worked, and I've lived 25 years cancer-free. But for anybody who goes through any kind of cancer treatment, and I went into the children's hospital and I could see cancer patients. It is dramatic, horrific for families. For the individual, it's a horrific thing. And my prayer is that they manage sooner rather than later to cure cancer and find a cure for cancer. And that's indeed why I'm a trustee of Blood Cancer UK, because it's something that's close to my heart.
That's marvellous, and we're so glad that it was all successful in the end. But also you had a setback. I mean, very briefly, as it's gone so quickly this hour, I can't believe it. I want to rewind it. But very, very briefly, also you had a terrible accident on your e-bike just a short while ago. During
COVID, I decided that we couldn't go out or anything like that, so I bought bicycles, electric bikes for my children, and the three of us would go into the forest, the woods. It was great. When COVID was over, I still carried on this process, and on this one occasion, I was just riding my bike, poodling along, and I heard a noise, which was my rear mudguard, and the next thing I knew, I'd been thrown off my bike, and I looked behind me because I thought I'm going to get killed, because this road, and the vehicle behind me was an ambulance, an empty ambulance. They came along. They saw the injury that I had, a bone sticking out of my ankle. Oh. Sorry, everybody. And it was horrific. I called my wife and kids. They came along, and I thought they would take me to Barnet General, which is my local hospital. They said, no, mate, with that injury, you're going to St. Mary's. And I passed out because they gave me sort of some drugs to knock me out. But when I woke up, I was in St. Mary's, and they said, well, we're going to have to amputate your leg. So I said, do not take my leg off. Do not take my leg off. So the surgeon said, look, we'll try to save your leg, but you have to go into theatre right now. So he operated on me all through the night. And in fact, I had 10 operations all in all. But the wonderful news is that he saved my leg. He's now a personal friend. He saved my leg so I can walk. I don't limp. My tennis days are over, sadly. But the thing is, I'm here to live another day, hopefully more than one day.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure to meet you and to talk to you in the studio this afternoon. I beg your pardon, everybody. And if you want to know more, Single-Minded, Claude Littner's book is My Life in Business. Thank you so much for joining us on the programme. And I can't think of a nicer way of sort of easing my way back into this as I'm going up to the news. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You've been listening to a TRE production. If you've enjoyed this programme, there'll be another episode waiting for you next week, right here on this platform, where you can also access our extensive back catalogue of shows and interviews. For more information on our live programming, social media channels and apps, and how to contact Talk Radio Europe, please visit tre.radio.